After taking the turn onto Fier Street and turning it back to 1978, we're going to get a taste of the mass hysterics, colonization, and bigotry of 1666. In the epic finale of the Fier Street trilogy, we get a look at the life of Sarah Fier herself, and discover that some Shadysiders and Sunnyvalers go way back to when they were once one in the settlement of Union. Today, as a continuation of the Fier Street series, we're going to take a look at everyone who dies in Fier Street Part 3, and if they could have lived. After the devil has entered Union with a series of plant and animal death and decay, our first sign of human death occurs, with the deaths of 12 children at 31 minutes in. After the teens of Union threw a party in the woods, darkness fell upon the settlement. Inflicted by this darkness was the pastor, Cyrus Miller. While it isn't shown, it is implied that Cyrus gathered all of the children up, locked them in the church, and gouged out each and every one of their eyes. And in a neat little moment of foreshadowing, the kids would dance and chant a rhyme in which Pastor Miller was blind as a bat, tried to read the Bible, and his eyes went splat. Now, I'm a bit skeptical of this story, as I'm absolutely sure that once he gouged out the first eye of the first child, or killed the first child if he killed them first, all of the others would have fought or caused some sort of commotion. But we are left with a church full of children, slumped over on the pews, eyeless and dead. And because we did not see these deaths occur, whether they could have lived or not is unclear. The next to die at 33 minutes in is Cyrus Miller himself. In addition to the children, he had gouged out his eyes as well. Yet when Sarah Fier entered the church and found her brother, Cyrus seemed to go after her. This prompted Solomon Good, an ancestor of reoccurring Sunnyvaler Nick Good, to fatally stab him with a pitchfork. Considering that Cyrus no longer had eyes, and we later find out that he was doomed to the witch's curse, I'm going to say that his death was slated. Now, at 46 minutes in, after all hell breaks loose and Sarah is accused of witchcraft and bewitching the pastor, she runs into the forest to a hut where a widowed woman lives. At this point in the film, it is clear to us that Sarah Fier is not the witch the legends make her out to be. But she is a girl boss and is disgusted by the treatment that she is receiving at the hands of the men of Union. So she sets off to give them the witch they want, and hopes to talk to the widow to learn how she can contact the devil. Unfortunately for her, she finds the widow dead with a slit across her neck. Once again, since she doesn't die on screen, aside from a split-second clip that is shown later on, we cannot tell if the widow could have lived. Up next is Sarah Fier herself, who is hanged for the crime of witchcraft. And brace yourself everyone, we're going to be talking about Sarah Fier for quite a while. Sarah suffered what is probably the most drawn-out death of the trilogy. After finding the widow dead, she decided to turn to one of her few friends left, Solomon Good. To Sarah's dismay, however, she discovers that it was Solomon who brought the devil to Union. He had killed the widow, stole her book of witchcraft, and used it to scorch the earth with the devil's mark that we saw in part 2. Solomon tries to reason with Sarah by explaining that he's still the same man that she knows, that he cares very deeply for her, that he grew tired of being misfortunate after the loss of his child and wife, and that he only needs to sacrifice one soul every few years in return for prosperity for him and the future generations of good. Of course, Sarah is not taking any of that one soul crap, as the pastor killed 12 kids, including her own brother. So she stabs Solomon and her death chase begins. At this point, Sarah is running through the tunnels seen in the second part of the series, desperately looking for a way out. She finds the opening where Camp Nightwing's outhouses later stand, and begins to climb, but Solomon catches up to her and drags her down. The man is cuckoo bananas, as he pleads that Sarah not make him hurt her, because he loves her. Eventually, Sarah is able to bite Solomon and release his grip on her, but he quickly responds by stabbing her in the wrist forcefully enough to break the bone, and then using the edge of a rock, breaks her hand clean off. It is absolutely brutal, but the separation of her hand from her arm frees her and allows her to run away. It also explains why Alice found her hand beneath the outhouses in 1978. Eventually, Sarah finds another way out of the tunnels under the church, just as it was under Camp Nightwing's kitchen in 1978. Solomon then catches up to her and drags her out of the church, claiming that he's found the witch. Sarah and her lover Hannah Miller are then dragged out to the hanging tree, and the villagers demand a confession. So, Sarah gives them one hell of a witch's curse. She saves Hannah by claiming that she bewitched her alongside her father, the pastor. Then she damns Solomon, saying that she will follow him forever, show them what he's done, and that she will never let him go. I believe that this provides us insight as to why in the previous two films, Sam and Ziggy saw the witch after bleeding on her bones. They simply never got the full story, since Sam bled on her body, which was missing its hand, and Ziggy bled on her hand, which was missing the body. Only now that Dina has bled on the body and hand united, has Sarah Fier's story been shared. Then, at 1 hour 3 minutes in, Sarah is hanged. Later that night, her friends move her body and give her a proper burial where they place a crown of red moss on her head. This moss ends up spreading all across Shadyside, staining Cindy's shirt in 1978 and covering her bones in 1994, further cementing Sarah Fier's grip upon the land. And it is henceforth understood that good is evil. I was absolutely losing my mind at this point. For the past 3 weeks, I had been watching each part of the trilogy as they were released to Netflix with my friends, and we hollered as each connection was made. The moss, the bones, the names on the wall, Sunnyvale's prosperity, why Nick Good was able to revive Ziggy, why the killers came after those who saw Sarah, Nick's hesitance to corroborate Ziggy's claims that the witch's curse was real. Everything clicked. Now, putting my excitement aside, Sarah's death is tricky. Oddly enough, I often think about accusations of witchcraft. And yeah, I'm under the firm belief that if I were living in this time and accused, I'd just run off and start a new life elsewhere. IDs weren't really a thing, so I'm under the impression that I, or in this case Sarah, wouldn't have too much trouble inventing a story and entering a new settlement. However, Sarah is a fighter, and after finding the widow dead, it makes sense that she turned to Solomon. And once she finds the devil's mark in Solomon's house, she's almost as good as dead. Her one shot here would be to have played along with Solomon. He liked her, so perhaps she could have used that to buy time and escape when the moment was right. But again, she's a fighter, not a runner. She's lost her brother and is at risk of losing her lover, so it makes sense to me that she fought Solomon. Once she makes it out of the tunnels, I see no way in which she could have lived. It was no longer her versus one killer, Sarah versus Solomon. It was Sarah versus a village of killers. Additionally, after losing her hand and using all of her strength to escape Solomon, I believe she was just too tired to keep fighting. Considering Sarah's spirit, rage, sadness, and confusion, I do not believe that she would have made different choices. Sarah Fier lived in a world that was not ready for her. Many hated who she was, and would use fear to convince others to do the same. It makes you wonder, if Solomon was absent from this story, how long would it have been before she was accused anyway? Because of this, I believe Sarah's death was slated. Moving past Sarah Fier and back into 1994, Dina is here, and she's out to spread the message that good is evil. She, Josh, Ziggy, and Martin, the mall janitor, then team up with a plan to trap the undead killers who are now after Dina and end Good's deal with the devil. While their plan unfolds, at 1 hour 22 minutes in, 2 police officers are killed by the milkman. The first officer is snuck up on and stabbed in the back, and the other is stabbed in the stomach after shooting the milkman. In terms of the first cop, Ziggy and Martin tried to warn him, but of course he paid them no mind. Though, even ignoring their warnings, I find it a bit unrealistic that he was completely snuck up on. The room was rather quiet in the moments right before his death. I'm going to say that if this were a more realistic situation, he would have heard the milkman coming, and been able to step out of the way to at least avoid an instant death. As for the second officer, he opens fire on the milkman, making him a target. However, when he runs out of ammo, he takes a painful amount of time to run or, quite frankly, do anything. The milkman is one slow fellow, so I believe the cop could have outrun him, and potentially the killer would have lost interest in order to continue pursuing Dina. I also find it strange that the cop's bullets did nothing to even slow the milkman, while both times that Ruby Lane is shot, she is left incapacitated for some time. While I recognize that their jobs as cops likely means that they shouldn't run from this sort of situation, I'm going to say that both of these guys could have lived, especially the second cop. Our final death occurs at 1 hour 38 minutes in as Dina stabs Nick Good through the eye. After a struggle in the Devil's Mark tunnels below the mall, Dina is able to force Nick's hand over to the giant evil blood devil heart thing at the center of the tunnels. This causes him to witness the deaths of all of those who were killed by the killers he'd created, and it leaves him in shambles. There was a point in time, when he was young, when Nick might have chosen a different life for himself, but the favor of the devil has certainly turned him sour, so Dina uses his state to her advantage and stabs him through the eye, killing him immediately. Perhaps if he hadn't been so caught up in threatening Dina and throwing slurs at her, Nick would have been able to kill her quickly. After all, he had already gotten a stab off on her. Or, on her cardboard body armor. But in dealing with the devil, are you ever truly alive? Is your soul ever free to do what it wants? Nick Good might have worked hard to preserve his prosperous life, but the devil's influence has left him in a dark place. After seeing the blood that had been spilled on his hands and hearing Sarah Fier's curse, it is understandable that the man who was thrown into evil at a young age would be horrified by his own actions to a debilitating point. Because of this, I do not believe that he could have stopped Dina once he touched the heart. And yeah, I do not believe that he could have lived, from both a literal and plot standpoint. All in all, Fier Street Part 3 leaves us with 18 deaths. Though at the very end, a Sunnyvaler in his car is hit by a large truck. I am going to be an optimist here and say that he survives that. Of the dead, a whopping 13 are unclear, 2 could have lived, and 3 were slated. Anyways, thank you all for watching today's video. If you have any thoughts to add or movies you'd like me to take a look at next, leave a comment below. Also, please consider leaving a like and subscribe to support me. As always, be good people, love others, and love yourselves. Peace.